Hi, I'm Doug Jensen with Vortex Media. Welcome to the 6th episode of Sony's XDCAM Essentials video training series. Today, we're going to talk about recording 4 channels of audio with Sony's newest HD422 camcorders, which are the PMW200, the PMW160, and the PMW100. And even though more and more professionals are choosing to shoot their productions with these 3 camcorders, I'm pretty sure that a lot of those people still aren't taking full advantage of their camera's ability to record 4 channels of audio. Now, granted, having 4 channels of audio won't always offer distinct advantages over 2 channels, but once you start enjoying the benefits of having those extra channels, you'll wonder how you ever got along without them. But first of all, let's address some myths and rumors that you may have heard about recording 4 channels of audio with Sony's HD422 camcorders. Myth number 1. You can only get 4 channels of audio if you're using one of the camera's high-end UDF video recording formats. Well, that's false, because the camera always records 4 channels of audio no matter which one of its dozens of high-definition formats you're using, and that includes all of the FAT formats. And by the way, if you're not familiar with the terms FAT and UDF, I strongly recommend that you spend a few minutes watching episode number 2 of this video series. Myth number 2. The recording quality of channels 3 and 4 isn't as good as channels 1 and 2. Well, that's also false, because the specifications of 3 and 4 are exactly the same as 1 and 2. For example, when you're recording with one of the UDF formats, all 4 channels provide the exact same 24-bit, 48 kHz uncompressed recording quality that XDCAM HD is famous for. In fact, I'm not aware of any video camcorder at any price from any manufacturer that offers better audio specifications. Now, obviously, there might be some quality differences between the microphones or other audio sources that you choose to record on each of the 4 channels, but that's an entirely different matter. And myth number 3. When you ingest clips into your computer, you won't have 4 discrete audio channels to work with. You'll just get a down-mixed 2-channel stereo track. Well, that's also false, unless, of course, you've made a big mistake someplace in your workflow. With all of the major NLE programs that I'm familiar with, including Final Cut 7, Final Cut 10, Premiere, Avid, and Vegas, you don't have to do anything special to keep all 4 channels separated so that they can each be mixed and edited independently in post. So now that we've dispelled the most prevalent myths, let's talk about the realities of recording 4 channels of audio, because there are some things that you do need to be aware of if you expect to get the best results. First, although the camera records 4 channels of audio, a quick glance at the side of the camera will reveal that there are only 2 XLR inputs. So how can you record 4 different sources? Well, even though the camera only has 2 XLR inputs, don't forget that it also has a built-in stereo microphone that can be used simultaneously with the XLR inputs. For example, here's a typical configuration you might use for recording 4 channels of audio. On XLR input number 1, you could plug in a wireless microphone receiver that's mounted to the top of the camera, and then route the incoming audio signal so that it's recorded on channel 1. By the way, if you're in the market for a versatile wireless microphone system with excellent sound quality, you can't go wrong with any of Sony's UWP products. With their durable metal construction, auto channel scanning, and selectable mic or line input, these wireless audio systems sound great and really enhance the flexibility of the HD422 camcorders. On XLR input number 2, you could plug in a shotgun microphone and route that incoming signal to channel 2. Now, that microphone could either be mounted on the camera itself right here, or you might decide to mount it on a boom pole like I've done with my Sony ECM 678 shotgun. And for channels 3 and 4, you could record the left and right channels of the built-in stereo microphone. And thus, you have 4 different audio sources being recorded as 4 discrete audio channels. But is it really fair to count the left and right channels of the stereo microphone as 2 different sources? Well, some people might look at it that way, but I don't. I think it's better to say that we can record 3 audio sources, with 2 of them being mono and 1 of them being stereo, for a total of 4 discrete audio channels. But no matter whether you want to call this configuration 3 or 4 sources, it's a big step up from the days of being limited to 2 channels. Now, I'll be the first to admit that it'd be great to have 4 separate XLR inputs, so you could truly record 4 different external microphones. But hey, even Sony's $29,000 PDW F800 doesn't offer 4 analog inputs. As you'll discover for yourself, it's really great to have the option of being able to record the built-in stereo microphone even when you're already using two external microphones or other audio sources. For example, suppose you're shooting two people who have been mic'd with lavalier microphones and you're recording them on channels 1 and 2. Well, now you can still capture NAT sound on channels 3 and 4 at the same time. That's a big benefit for shooting news and documentaries. Or suppose you're shooting a concert and you're able to get a stereo feed from the house mixing board that you can record on channels 3 and 4. Now that will allow you to capture the band perfectly, but what about the sounds of the crowd? A concert without some crowd noise to mix in won't sound very exciting. So in this scenario, I'd recommend recording the built-in stereo microphone on channels 1 and 2. And that brings up a cool feature of the HD422 cameras. There are literally dozens of ways you can configure the 4 audio channels to meet the needs of different types of productions. For example, on this hypothetical concert shoot, notice that I've chosen to record the incoming feed from the house mixing board on channels 3 and 4. And I'm going to record the crowd on channels 1 and 2. Now why would I choose to use this particular configuration if all the channels are equal? Well, because they're not equal. It's important to know that the recording levels of channels 1 and 2 can either be set automatically or manually, but the levels of channels 3 and 4 are always set automatically by the camera. So going back to the concert example, if we're going to be receiving a nicely mixed feed from the house audio board via the XLR inputs, I'd want to route that sound to channels 3 and 4 because I probably won't need to adjust the audio levels manually. On the other hand, I'd use channels 1 and 2 to record the crowd noise with the built-in stereo microphone, so that I'd have full manual control over the recording levels. Another common use for channels 3 and 4 is to configure them to function as insurance against audio levels that could unexpectedly get too loud on channels 1 and 2. For example, let's say that you're shooting an interview and you've manually set the volume to the optimum levels and everything is going along great, until suddenly the talent starts laughing or talking a lot louder. If you're not able to adjust the audio levels fast enough, you could end up with an audio signal that has been recorded too hot and therefore will sound distorted or clipped. That's not good. But if you had previously set up channels 3 and 4 to record the exact same audio sources as channels 1 and 2 as insurance against levels that suddenly get too loud, then there's a very good chance that you could use the audio from those two channels to save the day. Of course, you might be tempted to just set the recording levels on channels 1 and 2 to automatic in the first place, but I wouldn't suggest doing that. Why? Because although automatic might prevent unwanted peaks, that safety comes at the price of recording the rest of the interview with potentially inconsistent audio levels that will fluctuate up and down during the shoot, and that might be difficult to correct in post. So with 4 channels of audio at your disposal, you get the best of both worlds. Total manual control over the recording levels of channels 1 and 2, but you also have channels 3 and 4 standing by as insurance. Now before we wrap up this episode, let's take a quick look at how to set up some of the 4-channel audio configuration settings on this PMW 200 that we've been talking about. And by the way, if you've got a PMW 160 or a PMW 100, all of the audio controls on your camera will be exactly the same. I'll begin by pressing the status button and returning to the audio status page that we've been using throughout this video. Now we can't change any settings from this page, but it provides a very handy way to quickly check the camera's current settings. In fact, this is the only place on the camera where you can ever see the recording levels of channels 3 and 4. Right around -10 is the area where you want your audio levels to peak. Any higher and you'll risk distortion. Any lower and you might not have a strong enough signal for clean editing. Next to each of the meters, you can see whether a channel is configured for recording the internal microphone or an external source that has been connected to one of the XLR jacks. And notice that I say external source instead of microphone. And the reason for that is because you're not limited to just microphones. You can just as easily connect the camera to a mixer or some other device that has audio outputs. The incoming source for channels 1 and 2 is determined by the position of this pair of switches on the side of the camera. Watch the status page change as I flip the switch for channel 1 back and forth a couple of times. Next, this pair of switches is where you decide if you'll be setting the levels of channels 1 and 2 manually or letting the camera do it for you automatically. If you choose manual, then the recording level is controlled with the corresponding dial. If you do decide to connect an external audio source to either of the XLR jacks, then you must use these switches to specify whether the source is coming in at line level, mic level, or if it's a microphone that requires phantom power. For example, the small Sony XDCAM MS2 shotgun microphone that I frequently use on my camera requires phantom power. So that's the basics of channels 1 and 2. Now what about channels 3 and 4? There are no external controls for 3 and 4, so let's press the menu button. Go to the Audio Set Menu tab and choose Audio Input. The first menu is where you select the source for channel 3. Internal means the left side of the built-in stereo microphone, and external means XLR input number 1. Obviously, the next menu controls the input source for channel 4. It's great to be able to configure all 4 channels completely independently, but as I said earlier, the recording levels of channels 3 and 4 can't be set manually. As you can see, there are quite a few additional menu settings that allow further customization of the audio input and output settings, but those go beyond the scope of this presentation. If you'd like more information, please check out my 3-hour training DVD that covers every aspect of the HD422 camcorders in great detail. And for even more tips on capturing excellent sound in various production environments, check out the Audio Basics episode of Sony's Shoot Like a Pro video series. Well, that's a quick overview of how to record 4 channels of audio on Sony's HD422 Handycams. And that brings us to the end of the 6th episode of XDCAM Essentials. I hope you found this video helpful, and I invite you to tune into our next video. Until then, happy shooting.